Hello there, Callum Johns here, and welcome to a new series of Defending the Expanded Universe. Now, I originally intended to make this all one video, however, our recording goes for nearly 2 hours. And so, I'm doing this in different sections as I have major points that I've dotted throughout, and I'll be cutting them up and doing them separately. So I may as well just send you straight into it. It is, of course, my point of view, but it is based on quotes and evidence that I've read and has convinced me of the way that things were. And why should you listen to me and hear what I have to say? Well, I'm doing YouTube. People didn't tend to put their opinions on YouTube, but other than that, I have collected every single adult novel in the Expanded Universe, and I'm currently working on reading through them, and I'm working on reading through the comics. I've got most of the junior novels, I'm still working on that a little bit, and prices are gone. Anyway, they're expensive. I've also created my own Expanded Universe timeline, which I'll put the link in the description below. And so I have done research into a lot of things there. That research methodology is also extended out to researching each of the quotes I'm using and into what the state of Lucasfilm was like before 2014 as accurately as possible. Because, of course, at its essence, you can't take too much of what they say after the reboot date of how they viewed the Expanded Universe. Because they've now got the cultural lens of, oh, we've rebooted that, we're going to view that a bit differently. Anyway, I will start by saying that the EU saved the Star Wars franchise from going into obscurity in the early 90s. The Marvel comics came out and people were interested, and then there was a dark period where there was no Star Wars. And then in 1991, Heir to the Empire came out, and that really kept people's interest, spiked people's interest. We wouldn't even have the prequels if it wasn't for the Expanded Universe material. It's why we have so much stuff, and why there's even new movies. Whatever you think of the new movies, they're only popular because of the extra EU material and the interest kept in Star Wars. And one of the things people have said is not many people read the books. Well, looking back at the books, they were always on the New York Times bestseller lists, and they were one of the 4 biggest money makers of the franchise. Toys was the biggest, obviously. And you have the movies, then the video games, and people have actually gotten into the Expanded Universe through the video games. And all of the video games before 2014 are Expanded Universe, of course. And then the books are the 4th pillar. So there's actually a lot of money in the books and video games, and the video games are Expanded Universe as well. I thought we'd look at the root of the word canon first. So in reference to fiction, which is all this is really about, it started in 1911 when Ronald Knox wrote an essay about the literature of Sherlock Holmes. And when trying to define the difference between the works written by Sir Arthur Doyle and other people, he referred to Sir Arthur Doyle as canon, meaning that was real for him. In the end of that, he was saying that canon was something that you end up deciding for yourself, as a lot of the Sherlock fans at the time considered everything canon, while he only considered the stuff written by Sir Arthur Doyle as canon. However, the word also evolved to mean a lot more into what it is now, and I think Star Wars really helped define something as canon in having an official story that is efficiently licensed, compared to just having fanfiction out there. Because if it was just fanfiction, you don't really need to officially authorize it at all. Nothing needs to be approved, nothing has to be kept connected together. It's just fanfiction. So when they chose to make everything in continuity and as part of one canon for the universe, that's something that they coined the term a bit more, and the word evolved into meaning the officially licensed official story. And here's where we go into that the expanded universe was canon, according to Lucasfilm. To begin with, Lucasfilm has always and still does care for and state the official continuity of the Star Wars universe. Whatever you think of what it's become now, they always state what is officially canon at the time. Now, of course, they rebooted on April 25th, 2014 and said that the new timeline's canon, but they were always said that the timeline beforehand, the expanded universe, was canon before that decision was made. There were people employed by George Lucas to keep track of everything in the EU. The extra movies, the TV shows, the comics, the books. Which, of course, if you even know that you're trying to read the EU comics yourself, or even looking at the EU, no one has time to keep track of everything going on unless it's your full-time job. I'm doing the best I can, but even me, I forget details, so you need some sort of system which was actually created as the holocron to be able to keep track of everything. And Star Wars became much bigger than one man. However, George did approve of all of the material produced, and he had checklists and everything that he approved of, and he said yes, no, and what not to, and so on and so forth. Namely, Leland Chee and Alan Korsh were hired to keep track of continuity at the time. Which, if it wasn't canon, I asked the question to other people, why bother to keep track of continuity if it's not canon? Anyway, so here's quotes from George Lucas era Lucasfilm employees regarding the continuity of the expanded universe at the time that they were still coming out. And as I said earlier, saying anything after April 25th, 2014, after they made the decision, may be coloured by a certain cultural lens that they have now. These quotes are taken from theexpandeduniverse.com, which I trust as a source, and they've looked into all of the sources for these, as I personally don't have all of the insider articles and everything to be able to double check everything. The link to the expandeduniverse.com website is in the description below. So, starting off with Peter Schweifer, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, who authored for the EU in Star Wars Galaxy Collector magazine #1 by Topps in 1998. He said that everything that is approved by Lucasfilm is official, no matter how small the contribution we've added to the well. So, that quote tells me, just from the start, that they're taking everything as officially licensed. And that is everything approved by Lucasfilm. And of course, that's the difference between fanfiction and the official continuity. And we have Sue Rostoni, Lucas Books and Lucas Licensing Managing Editor. And this is a quote put up on StarWars.com on May 30th in 2003. And what's weird about StarWars.com is they restructured, so it's hard to find some of these quotes. You can find some of them on the Wayback Machine and everything. And I have looked through that and confirmed these quotes. But this is the one that is quite definitive, straightforward. Basically, everything except those items marked with an Infinity logo, i.e. the Star Wars Tales comics, is considered canon. And that's from an employee of Lucasfilm at the time. That's pretty self-explanatory. Now next we have one from Leland Chee, who's, I mentioned his name earlier, he's a continuity database administrator, aka keeper of the holocron for Lucas Licensing. Basically kept track of all the continuity. This was also on StarWars.com on May 30th in 2003, which, from the looks of it, that was a time when a lot of these questions were coming up about continuity and what was canon. And he said, Lucasfilm Canon refers to anything produced by any of the Lucas companies, whether it be movies, books, games, or on the internet. Movie canon is only what you see and hear in the Star Wars films. So, in a way, they were explaining some of the different canon tiers there between G canon and C canon, where, of course, they made it structured so that there weren't any contradictions, which I'll get to later when I talk about how people say that the EU was a mess. So next we have Sue Rostoni again, and this is on StarWars.com in September 2003 on continuity versus canon. It's pretty much the same. Sounds better to say that we try to maintain the continuity of the universe rather than saying the canon of the universe. So they use the words interchangeably. So now you got to think of, they mention continuity, but then continuity now means the same thing as canon. Keeping it in mind for all of their wording and how they say things. And then we have Sue Rostoni again. But this is also paired with Alan Quash, who's a continuity editor for Lucasfilm, so keep track of the continuity. This is in 1994 in Souls Insider number 23. And that's fall of 1994, which I call autumn. Different countries. And they say, Gospel or canon, as we refer to it, includes the screenplays, the films, the radio dramas, and the novelizations. The novelizations are a big one because this was in 1994 when not as many of the books came out. So you had the books of the original saga, the original trilogy, I should say, which was A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. But then you also have all of the novelizations, which would include Splinter of the Mind's Eye and Heir to the Empire come out, along with Dark Force Rising and The Last Command, and then from there it's all of the rest of the EU. They go on to say, these works spin out of George Lucas's original stories. The rest are created by other writers. However, between us, we've read everything and much of it is taken into account in the overall continuity. And so, going back to the previous quote before, when they say continuity, they mean canon. Very interesting. And of course, later on they developed Infinities to just have the what-if stories. And here's an interesting one. In The Secrets of Shadows of the Empire in 1996, Mark Cotter-Vaz says, continuity has been the supreme commandment at Lucasfilm for Shadows and all its Star Wars projects. The company have made the decision to not only expand its universe, but to have it unfold as a seamless chronicle. Whether a new star system is explored in a novel, or a scene is set in ancient Jedi days from a comic series, nothing can contradict the history or logic of what has gone before. To keep it all straight, there is the canon, a timeline of major events and lifespan of main characters prepared by the continuity editors of Lucasfilm and considered the in-house Bible of the Star Wars universe. So they created resources for authors that couldn't go through everything to be able to get a summary of everything that happened so that things could stay in continuity and in line with the canon of the universe at the time. So tell me, if the EU was never canon, I pose this question again. Why do they go to that extreme length of creating a resource book for everything? And this leads into a quote from Tom Dupree, editor for the Bantam Spectre Star Wars book article from the New Yorker, and Why the Force is Still With Us on January 6th in 1997. And he says, everyone in the content creating galaxy of Star Wars has a copy of the Bible, a burgeoning canonical document, currently 170 pages long, that is maintained by continuity editors Alan Quash And Sue Rostoni, he says. So Sue Rostoni was having a huge part of continuity as well back in the day. I believe she's recently left Lucasfilm and isn't working there anymore, but what she says back then still holds weight on how Lucasfilm viewed everything at the time. So, Tom continues to say, "It is a chronology of all the events that have ever occurred in the Star Wars universe. In all the films, books, CD-ROMs, Nintendo games, comic books, and role-playing guides, and each medium is seamlessly coordinated with the others." So this could almost go in the other section, but I like connecting how well they paid attention to it, with that it was canon, that it was the main continuity of the timeline. And all of these quotes support that. And there's also another quote from Sue Rostoni. It was a big one for these quotes. And it's in Star Wars Gamer number 6 on July 1st in 2001. According to Lucas licensing editor Sue Rostoni, Canon refers to an authoritative list of books that Lucas licensing editors consider an authentic part of the official Star Wars history. Now, what does authentic mean to you? Authentic, genuine, real, officially part of the Star Wars history, as they say. And Sue continues on to say, "Our goal is to present a continuous and unified history of the Star Wars galaxy, insofar as that history does not conflict with or undermining the meaning of Mr. Lucas's Star Wars saga of films and screenplays. Things that Lucas Licensing does not consider official parts of the continuous Star Wars history shown in Infinity's logo or are contained in Star Wars Tales. Everything else is considered canon." This is from Lucasfilm themselves, the employees. This is how they viewed Star Wars and the expanded universe. They're not separate at all. And this is a great quote from Leland Chi, Continuity Database Administrator, aka Keeper of the Holocron for Lucas Licensing on StarWars.com August 4th, 2004. When asked if the G and C levels of canon formed separate and independent canon, Chi responded by stating that both were part of the single canon. There is one overall continuity. And you can see that in how they paid attention to the details. When good example is Boba Fett. When George Lucas gave him a different origin to what had previously been hinted at in the novels, then they retconned that to be able to fit together perfectly, in my opinion. Although while reading some of the older material, you do keep in mind that some of the older material, and they didn't know the origin to Boba that George was going to create. And of course George can veto anything because he's the creator. He's the one that created this universe and everyone's just building off of it. Now, Daniel Wallace, who's an author for the expanded universe, in Star Wars Insider 101 on May 2008, says the concept of an expanded universe certainly isn't unique to Star Wars. Many popular genre properties from Star Trek to Alien release spin-off tales that shed light on events not seen in the official narrative. So, as I've heard other people say, other universes don't keep things in continuity as good. They don't have one single timeline. They just write stories, and then if they line up, then that's good. They sort of have their own separate novel timelines, I guess, but not one official narrative that lines up in all forms of media. And Daniel goes on to say, but Star Wars EU, which he probably would have said, but Star Wars Expanded Universe is unique both in its size and its care, which is in the narrative, which is shepherded and organised, and Star Wars The Expanded Universe is official. So there you go. It's official, and I think those quotes speak a lot for themselves, along with what I've already said along with them. Let's see about some quotes from the actual material. On the cover of Star Wars Obsession number 1, it says, the action-packed lead in to Revenge of the Sith. So that was actually meant to connect together with all of that. On Labyrinth of Evil, on the original cover, it has the must-read prequel to Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And, because it's part of the Dark Lord trilogy now, afterwards they have Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader. On the original one they say, the must-read sequel to Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith. And that's brilliant. Now I also have a quote from one of the Han Solo trilogy of novels, and it's titled The World of Star Wars Novels in this section. And it gives a little bit of a background to what happened there. So it says, in May 1991, Star Wars caused a sensation in the publishing industry with the banned and spectral release of Timothy Zahn's novel, Heir to the Empire. For the first time, Lucasfilm Limited had authorised new novels that continued the famous story told in George Lucas's 3 blockbuster motion pictures, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Reader reaction was immediate and tumultuous. Heir reached number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list and demonstrated that Star Wars lovers were eager for exciting new stories set in this universe, written by leading science fiction authors who shared their passion. Since then, each Bandom Star Wars novel has been an instant national bestseller. So that goes back to who read the books? Oh wait, they were bestsellers. Lucasfilm and Bantam decided that future novels in the series would be interconnected. Canon. That is, events in one novel would have consequences on the others. You might say that each Bantam Star Wars novel, enjoyable on its own, is also part of a much larger tale. So this also connects into not really being a mess like people make it sound, but that also tells me that Lucasfilm started taking canon more seriously when Heir to the Empire came back. It got more attention, they knew that people wanted it, and so they delivered. So I hope you enjoyed this informational video. I hope you learned something, at least a little bit about it, and that you can be open-minded about everything. I would like to address one other thing that I noticed come up after I finished recording it. People who think George Lucas is the only person who can say what is canon. Now, I see Lucasfilm as an extension of George Lucas's view, and so he wouldn't let them say that and say what they said if it wasn't true. He will be policing it and saying, you do need to make sure you clarify that these are separate things between my timeline and the EU timeline. On top of that, those were employees at the time when George Lucas was in charge, and so the culture that comes down from him would have been very much how he influenced it for them to view it. I'll get to George Lucas in another video. So thank you for sticking with me, and I'll see you there.